Squeeze in a quick workout, but I'll leave it to the podcast because he's a pretty interesting guy, and I'm gonna go to the gym now and try not to catch coronavirus and destroy my legs and enjoy the podcast.
Awesome.
Let's do it.
Right. Okay. Right.
Seconds. Lulu, I'm working, sweetie. Can you go downstairs? Are you kidding me? No. Work time.
Chuck her in.
Hang on 2 seconds, mate.
Mate, love it.
That's the first time that's happened, to be fair, in 6 months.
Mate, it's the
in a
modern
weird
world.
mood today.
You've seen
isn't it
seen
just?
on the news. Kid
I
coming
know.
in.
I know. Okay, cool. Go on, mate. Sorry, start again. Let's go for it again.
No, don't worry about it. It's I love it. It's the one. People ask me what my strategy is, and I have one thing. It's like authentic. You know, be authentic. You know, so stuff like that is, you know, I think if you try and cover it up or hide it, I think you know, I love it. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, as I was saying, you know, if you were to take a quick look at James, it is all podcasts. It's podcast. But what about life before you started to get into podcasts? What was happening before there? What did you do? You know, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so in 2006, prior to 2006, I'd been a holiday rep and a holiday entertainer, and I was a cabaret singer, and I'd just done like loads of like fun stuff. But in 2006, I was like, do you know what? 2005, I did X Factor, and we got to boot camp, but we didn't get any further than that. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to be a pop star then. That's fine. I better do something sensible. So in 2006, I got into the world of broadcast PR. So I used to work with the likes of BMW, Nissan, Thomas Cook. Not such a good brag anymore. Ordnance Survey Maps. I worked with Stella Artois, Taylors of Harrogate, all these massive brands. I'd effectively help them to communicate their core messages via interviews or competitions on radio. So my love for like broadcast started in 2006. And I'm not really I'd always been a fan of the radio before that, but I'd not been sort of interested in it from like a professional standpoint. But I got into, I just absolutely fell in love with it. Fell in love with the medium itself. I fell in love with branding and marketing and PR because I didn't really have, I had an interest in all that stuff, but I'd never really taken it that seriously, if that makes sense. And this job that I ended up getting was a bit of an amalgamation of all those things. It made me have to be able to sell and deal with clients and deal with agencies. You know, we worked on like launches for Xbox and Nando's, and I was in 23, 24, thought I knew it all. Turns out I didn't know it all. I definitely didn't know it all. And I'd sit in these meetings with branding agencies and marketing agencies and, you know, global, FMCG consumer brand people would be sitting there. And I was this 23-year-old lad who thought he knew it all, but actually probably in hindsight knew fuck all.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just such a great learning experience. So that was 2006. I did that for about 3 or 4 years. And then I just did various stuff in the broadcast space. So I ended up being on the radio for a station called Amazing Radio, which is a digital station up in Newcastle. So I was on there for a little while as a presenter. I did sponsorship and promotion for the UK's largest business and sports news bulletin provider. So we used to do the bulletins for 160 stations around the UK. And then I ended up working for record labels in the end.
Okay.
And I worked for independent record labels. So I worked on, do you remember the song Steal My Sunshine? If you steal my sunshine, it was like a summer hit, like 20 years ago. You might be a bit too young for it. But so I worked on the re-release of Steal My Sunshine. And I was like, it was my favourite song of all time. And I got to work on the re-release of it with my favourite record label called Alcopop, which is this little cool independent record label. I was like, this is about as good as it gets.
Yeah.
But at the same time as I was working in the music industry, I was working in this music management company. And the boss at one point said to me, how would you feel, just an idea, but how would you feel about taking your wages in installments this month? And I was like, I'd feel pretty shit about it. Why? Have we got no money? And she was like, not really. And I was like, okay. I'm going to have to go and do something else. So I realized that music was kind of about as dodgy an industry as you can get. Yeah. So I started buying up some investment properties and moving into that field.
Oh, okay.
And eventually it came to the point where I loved music. I loved glass ceiling. There was a very much a limit to what you could charge and earn in that space. Don't get me wrong, you know, within music, you've got like the mega stars who make 90% of the money, and then there's 90% of the people who make 10% of the money. And I was definitely going to be the 90% making 10% of the leftover money. I was like, I'm in a bit of a race to the bottom here.
Yeah.
And I never forget, I worked on a release for a brand new band, and we ended up getting them airplay on Radio 1 and XFM, Radio 2, 6 Music. It's the best campaign I'd ever done. Best campaign I'd ever done. I was so proud of it, and I loved the band, and I just thought they were going to take off. I was like, these guys are going to be the next Coldplay. They had that kind of sensibility about them, and you might hear that and be like, oh my God, we definitely don't need another Coldplay in the world. But they were epic. And we'd done this campaign, and then the record label came to me after. They said, look, we can't believe what you've been able to achieve with the band. It's kind of got them on to the next level, but therefore we need someone who's a level up from what you can do in terms of radio promotion. Really sorry, but we're going to go with somebody else. And I was wounded. I was wounded by it. And at the same time, I've been doing the property stuff, and the property stuff was starting to even out in terms of I was making as much money in property as I was in music. I was only spending 5% of my time in the property. I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Yeah. So I sacked off the music and I went into property full time. So I was a property manager. At one point I had a management company in London. So I had 20 odd units that we used to look after, which was 93 rooms. We had about 10 million quid worth of property on our books.
At that point in time, which did you enjoy more? Did you enjoy the music or did you enjoy the property?
Do you know what? It's a weird one. I probably enjoyed them both equally.
Yeah.
But I loved the music industry, but that situation where the record label went and used somebody else after I'd done it as good a job as I could do. And they were absolutely right.
Yeah. Cutthroat industry.
It is a cutthroat industry. And do you know, the word of radio plugging, that's what they call it. It's basically about who you know. And there's these radio pluggers who've been around for 20 years. They're fucking best mates with all of the DJs at Radio 1. That's how records get played on the radio. Yeah. You know, it's not as democratized as you'd like to think. It's literally an industry about, you know, who you know. You know, it's not what you know, it's who you know, and how deep your relationships are with those people. So, yeah, I fell out of love. I loved the music industry, but I fell out of love with what I was doing. And also I realized that for a lot of bands, to get them on the books to start with, I'd done them kind of like mates rates deals. And I realized I was going to have to, I could only really service about 13 clients and do it well. And based on what I was charging, I knew at maximum I was, you know, going to be bringing in $6-7 grand a month. Don't get me wrong, you know, 10 years ago when that was a shitload of money to me at that point in time. But I realised I had glass ceilinged myself. Yeah. So, and with me, I don't know if it's a positive thing or a negative thing, but I find a love for the next thing that's coming. So with property, it was kind of like a sideline thing.
I think it's only a positive, yeah.
Yeah, it can, but I think maybe sometimes then it makes me decide to leave the circumstance I'm in maybe a bit too quick. I've probably done that a few times realistically, but I find the passion. If I'm not passionate about it, I won't do it. And that was a lesson I learned from back in the day when I used to be involved in sales. Like, I can't sell something that I don't believe in, and I just can't do something I'm not 100% passionate about. So I had an equal passion for both, but I could see the upside of property was potentially a lot bigger. And a lot of the property space at the time, the property training space, it could tick a lot of the boxes as well. So, you know, as a singer or a performer, you've always got that sort of, I love being on a stage. You know, most people's fear is public speaking. I love public speaking. I love getting up on a stage. I love having conversations with people. You know, I've done gigs in front of 2 people in a shit bar in Wales, and I've done, you know, up to 1,000 people in front of like a warm up for Les Brown in London. So, you know, I kind of like the stage thing. I realised that property could give me like loads of cash, potentially massive upside, and there was still this property training environment where I could go and be on a stage and help people and coach people and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'd say it's a mutual love. It's weird now though, because I was thinking about this the other day. I haven't listened to back in the day when I was in the music game. I used to listen to a station called 6 Music, because that was kind of like the best place to find new tracks.
I remember, yeah, it was good.
Great station. I have not listened to 6 Music for 4 years now. And it's amazing. That's what I kind of do. I think I get very...
Radio's dead, isn't it? I mean, in a sad way. It's not completely. It's just...
They're saying that it's not, but I don't understand how it can't be. Like, everyone's like, oh, we've still got an 89% of the UK listen to radio each week.
Mainstream radio
do they, though?
Is around, yeah.
Do they really know? I'm not sure. I'm not entirely sure.
I mean, you're right in what you just said. You know, I'm kind of the same. I grew up in a very old, very authentic kind of gypsy. I grew up in two parents that raised me on music, not Xbox, playing guitar, old school music, Jimi Hendrix, U2, Fleetwood Mac. And, I didn't listen to any of the mainstream stuff at all. So, when I want to listen to music, I didn't really listen to any of the mainstream stuff or radio. I just listened to my uncle's tapes or my parents' vinyls or those kind of things. And if I did listen to radio, I remember it was either Fern Cotton or Chris Moyles, who are not really around anymore or doing anything, and they're not really top dogs. And it's, people want to say it's still relevant, but with streaming and with YouTube and with the way things are going, with music becoming so available online, I mean,
it's relevant to a certain demographic, and unfortunately, I think radio, and this sounds a little bit trite, but I think radio won't die because there'll always be a market for it, but it will die off as the demographic literally dies off.
Yeah, because
the mainstream listening audience. Don't get me wrong, you've got like Heart and all those sort of stations that appeal to like. Like the demographic that it appeals to. They've got, Mark Wright and Kelly Brook, and they've taken TV celebrities and put them on the radio effectively. So that's it's quite a clever business model. I hated it when I was in the industry, but from a business standpoint, I can see why it works. But more largely, the biggest station in the UK is Radio 2. That audience is older. That will eventually, they will die off, and the need for radio will be vastly different. I think you can see where it's going, given the sort of the importance now that the broadcasters are putting onto like podcasts and on-demand listening. The BBC have just set up a whole division in Bristol, and they've lumped in a couple of million quid for this whole department to come sort of just solely work on the podcast sort of space.
Yeah. Global
Radio, which owns LBC and XFM and Capital and all those big groups, and I think it owns Smooth as well. They've also got a sister company called DAX, which is the world's biggest podcast advertising agency. So they're already getting, fingers in lots of different pies, so that if one part of the industry dies off, they're strong in another area.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because, you mentioned your experience in radio and, moving into the branding area. Do you think that your experience in radio helped you talking about what's going on now in branding and talking to so many other people in so many other areas? Because, I see what's going on with Netflix. I see what's going on with YouTube. I see what's going on with Spotify. It is changing. It's changing around us, and whether people want to accept it or not. I was walking out with my dad the other day, and I mentioned to him that, I just so happened to watch the Champions League final live for free on YouTube. And a couple of years ago, I never would have imagined that would happen. But it was streamed for free on YouTube. But as a branding, that's good, because, imagine how many people would have streamed in live on BT Sport on YouTube, because they know they're going to get that. YouTube is just one of the main places of sources for news, information, music. It's people really underestimate, the way people get their information now.
I think that's been slightly democratized. People will now, or broadcasters will now, or brands will now go to where the audience is. They are on podcasts, they are on YouTube, they are on TikTok, they are on Insta, they are on Facebook, they are on Twitter, whether you like it or not. And I think there's a bit of a backlash, initially when the sort of the World Wide Web, 15 years ago started to gain some real traction. The likes of broadcasters didn't like it. iPlayer sort of popped up begrudgingly. You've still got like the paywall on a lot of like the newspapers. I think that's still the industry before radio goes anywhere, and before music sort of really changes how it works online. I think the sort of the news industry is going to have to vastly change. Because I was looking at an article the other day, and it still popped up. The Guardian, like, if you'd like to support the Guardian, I'm like, fuck me, you're a company. Like, I don't need to support you.
Yeah,
like you're an organisation, come up with a monetization model. And don't get me wrong, like they're very, very well written articles. It's very well put together content. But ultimately, there is now Medium. I don't need to pay for Guardian because there's Medium. I don't need to, I can get any amount of news that I want on Google. Like I say, YouTube is the second biggest search engine. You can learn how to do anything via YouTube, and you can either get on board with it or get run over by it. And I think it's difficult for the newspaper industries because information has become more democratized and it's become so much more readily accessible that I don't, if I was an owner of a newspaper group, I'd be shitting my pants. Like, where do you go?
But isn't it adapt or die though? Because I walk through Bournemouth every day. Yes, it's a kind of a small Bournemouth sea town, but I see again small newspapers. They're closing down. Small coffee shops, they're closing down. And some of these coffee shops are I've clients I've helped out before, small local businesses, and again I see them and I talk to them, but again they're doing exactly what you just said. They're not tapping into that exact thing. They're not going into the sources and the available resources that are there that are just so available. And the key thing, it's free. It's free, and it can help you. And again, that leads to my next question, which is kind of a two-parter here. Do these local small businesses or even big businesses, because some of the big businesses, they're not doing them as well, global and corporate, do they really understand what branding really is? Because I don't think people really do.
I don't think small businesses necessarily do. And there's a big difference between your brand is your reputation. I think the sort of branding as a general kind of overarching part of business is vastly misunderstood. It's even vastly misunderstood by marketeers and people in branding. They just get it wrong. They just get it wrong.
Because marketing and branding are two very different things.
Two very, very different things. Very different things. Marketing drives brand and brand drives marketing. And that's the way that it should work. But the two things are not the same. That's why in the big businesses you have a marketing director and a PR director and a brand director. It's the person that curates that whole message. But effectively, to put it really simply, your brand is your reputation. And branding is therefore the art form of curating the conversation of what your reputation stands for with your ideal demographic. Does Jones Caff on Bournemouth Seafront, which is a little coffee shop, understand brand? Probably fucking not. Do they need to? Probably, frankly, not. Yeah. They need to understand how to operate as a business. But what I would say to your point a minute ago, because this came up with a conversation I had with a broadcaster called Johnny Gould's when he came onto my podcast. We were talking about sort of like the big sort of globalization of broadcasters. I think for local businesses, there's an opportunity, but only if you go hyper local. Yeah. Hyper local. There's an opportunity for Bournemouth, for example. Bournemouth should have a radio station on the pier. Yeah. And they could go and sell spots of advertising for 15, 20, 30 quid cheap to local businesses, but keep it hyper local. Bournemouth FM, by Bournemouth, for Bournemouth, in Bournemouth. That should be the whole thing of it. And you could run that little radio station on £250,000 a year. The thing that's going to kill it is the cost of the broadcast license, which is fucking nonsense these days. Don't get me into that debate, especially when everybody could stream it live. But they could come up with some sort of a business model where it would work, where Jones Caff could advertise on it, for example. But those little businesses, rather than understanding the overarching sort of theory of brand and branding, does Jo need to go and upskill herself in branding? No, she needs to understand how to engage a local audience. How does she make people want to come back and use her? And for a business like that, I'd be looking at the Cafe Neros or the Costas. What do they do well? They get people back in again with loyalty cards. Has Joan got a loyalty card? How is she making, what is she doing? Can she be in the local press? Could she be part of something else? Could she, put on an open mic night, to make themselves part of the local community?
I think you've tapped it in there. I think people confuse the little, I like to call them little tricks, and they are little tricks sometimes. And I haven't worked in sales since the age of, 17 and my teenage years before I got into the fitness industry. You pick up these little things. And I think, what I do now, and especially for my following, and yes, I'm maybe niche compared to some of the other people I've worked with, you know, and they have thousands of other followers because they go off and do public speaking, motivational stuff. But the reason why I get to talk to those people and get to work with those people is because I do just exactly what you said there. I find out why they come back to where they're doing, you know, or why they come back to what they're doing, how they do it. It's listening. It's understanding the people. All it is basic people skills and basic research and understanding the tools that you have available to you, resources, and wanting to put in the work and actually doing it and executing on it. And I think people, especially local businesses, you know, some that I've worked with around me, they don't realize how hard it is. I'll give you an example. I was in one coffee shop. I was sat there one day, you know, writing a blog post, and it was really busy. You know, busiest it had been. You know, students come in there all the time. It's a local student hotspot. And I said to him, you know, he's a good friend of mine, and I said, it'd be a really good time to take a picture of the cafe right now, you know, and add it to your Instagram story, because this is the busiest the coffee shop is, and then that would show, you know, how busy it is. And he said, but I feel a bit uncomfortable taking, you know, photos of the people, and you know, and how would I even do that, and then how would I add it to the Instagram story? And this is the kind of thing that, you know, they don't know, and they've never done before. And things like sending a message, you know, with your YouTube link in a direct message to someone else after they've liked your content. I had to teach him how to do that, you know. So it's simple stuff like that.
There's definitely like simple skill set stuff that people should understand the basics of, but equally for me, I would be looking at that cafe and say, right, well, how can you engage that audience that's already there? Because this is one of the things that we're very guilty of as marketers and business people. How do we get new people? How do we get new people? Getting fresh blood in, that costs time, effort, and money. It's much easier to upsell your existing client base. You know, so rather than having to try and find new clients for that coffee shop, he's already got 30 people in there. How does he re-engage those 30 so they come back again tomorrow? Has he got a loyalty card? Has he got some sort of, could he do something random? Could he put people onto a mailing list? Could he have a database so that when it's people's birthday, they can come and get a free coffee or a free cake? You know, how do you increase that level of engagement? Because I think these days there's a little bit of a risk of people being like, well, you know, I'll put a photo of, you know, on Insta, I'll put it onto YouTube, or, you know, I'll do whatever. What's the point of it? You know, would you get more traction potentially? Could you do a Spotify playlist, you know, and the stuff that you're playing out in the coffee shop? Could you put that as a playlist and try and engage an audience that way? You know, could you talk to other coffee shop owners, you know, coffee shop confessions on a podcast or something along those lines, which upscale you as a personal brand? I think the thing that people need to, small and big businesses now, is double down and focus on personal brand, because personal brand, like, so the coffee shop owner, he needs to become the celebrity of the coffee world in Bournemouth, or the celebrity of small business world in Bournemouth. That's the bigger game, I think, at the moment.
Well, I hate to give you bad news, but he hasn't reopened, so yeah. But there's two types of people, aren't there? There's the people that will they'll coast and, you know, open, close, and, you know, whether you are in a coffee shop or whether you're in a, you know, a 9-to-5 office job, and, you know, check in, check out. And there's the other person that will go, I want more. You know, and I guess there's, you know, the other type of person that will go, you know, whatever it is, whether you're a freelancer or a 9-to-5, or, you know, a person running a business, you have to, you know, be that kind of person, or the other person who will go, something isn't good enough. How do I change it? Yeah,
definitely. I can't remember whose quote it is, but it goes, the mindset without the skill set. Oh, sorry. The skill set without the mindset will leave you upset. I'm like, oh, actually, that's very, skill set without the mindset will leave you upset. Yeah, that is the right way around of saying it. But it's so true. You know, Henry Ford said it, whether you think you can or you think you can't, either way, you're usually right. But, you know, So there's that basic sort of understanding of, like, that guy in that example there, he didn't know about Instagram, he didn't know about YouTube, you've had to tell him it. So there is a skill set deficiency, but more important than the skill set deficiency is the mindset to want to learn it. That's what's really, really important, because if you don't want to do anything, you won't. It's as simple as that. I've had loads of wins and losses and learnings in business. I've always got the hunger to carry on. Even if something goes wrong, the mindset has got to be, okay, cool. What can I learn from that situation? What can I take from that situation? How can I improve? How can I learn? Who do I need to learn from? That guy there, in that instance, I've been saying to myself, well, I don't know this. Nathan obviously does. How do I engage Nathan's services? Like, how do I pay that guy? Can I do, could he come in, use the services for free here all the time? Could I buy him a coffee once a week? Can I do something like that? But again, it all stems down to the mindset to want to do that. And then the basic understanding of what it is that you need to do. Because lots of people, I'm an IPQA qualified performance coach. I've coached lots and lots of people. They are tenacious as fuck. They're so driven. They will work until their eyes bleed, all the sort of like the Gary Vee quotes and that kind of stuff, but they don't know what the fuck they're doing. So there is that crossover point where mindset and skill sets, you almost have to be so driven to work out what you need to do next. And I think that's the point where sometimes people will fall over because they just don't know what they've got to do. So they just get busy. I'm doing 16 hours a day. What are you doing? I don't know. Running around in a circle. Well, you're going nowhere.
Do you know what? As much as I love Gary Vee, I stopped watching him several years back because, you can, if you watch something and then you understand it, you don't need to watch any more of it. And I think people worship him, but they don't realize why they're watching him. And it's exactly what you said. I'm so glad you touched on this mindset and perspective thing, because it is exactly why I got into the podcast, because I was making vlogs and I started it obviously while I was in the fitness industry, and I left the fitness industry because I was so tired of seeing people, exactly what you've just said, have the energy, come into my gym or another gym and have no fucking idea what they were doing or want to do. And they would come into me and go, I want a big bum, or I want big arms, and I was like, okay, as a coach, maybe let's break down as to why you want it, or why you're paying me, or, why we're doing this. Oh, no, I want to walk on the treadmill for a bit and swipe on Tinder. Okay. Is that a good usage of your PT time? No. Okay. But the fitness industry just completely changed over the last year or so that I was in it. And I was just fed up of people not really reaching their potential. And I wanted to kind of investigate and try and figure out what it is if there's people not accepting failure, as you just touched on there. Because there is a large percentage of people that just don't want to be okay with going, oh shit, I messed up. And then going out and realizing why I did it.
It's ego in a lot of cases, isn't it? People, your ego's there to protect you, and fear is there to protect you. A lot of people say, fear, false evidence appearing real, or, fuck everything and run, or whatever the other analogies for what FEAR stands for. I've just started reading Jay Shetty's book, actually, because he's coming onto our podcast in the next few weeks. A great book. And he talks about fear. It's like, everyone hates fear and everyone runs away from fear and everyone sees fear as a bad thing. But fear is there fundamentally. The fight or flight mechanism of fear is built into your brain to protect you from getting fucking eaten by a woolly mammoth. That's how fear started back in the day. And yes, now we've become fearful of, putting yourself out there and, fearful of public speaking, blah, blah, blah. There are things that you don't need to fear that we do fear, but fundamentally it's there as an alert. It's there as a warning. It's there to give you a reason and a rationale, or just to give you that sort of awareness that, okay, something's not right here. And it depends what you do with that information. I've had businesses that I've done very, very well financially. And then I've had some other stuff I've done and it's fucking flopped and it's horrible to fail, but, to be going through a failure, because, you only fail when you stop.
Yeah.
That's the thing I think people need to understand. You only fail when you stop. and there's nothing wrong with going through the process of failing to a certain point. But
Absolutely.
it's only when you perceive that it's a failure. So like my last business, for example, it was we did 7 figures in 18 months as coaches. I didn't agree with the way that my business partners were running the business, so I left the business. Now, some people say, well, then I failed because I couldn't turn a business into what I wanted it to be. But for me, it's not a fail. I've learned so many lessons from it. I learned so much about business partnerships. I learned so much about myself. You know, I love the guys I used to work with. I love them to bits.
Yeah.
You know, we traveled the world and we changed our lives and we all lived in, you know, we now live in nice houses with nice cars and all this kind of stuff. For me, that's not a fail in any way, shape or form. It's all the perception.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the sort of the mindset. Do you want to see things as a failure, or do you want to see them as potentially an opportunity to learn? And I think sometimes people don't want to go through the process or the pain of a perceived failure. But unfortunately, even more people that are scared of the failure, they won't even start because of the preconceived fear of it. You know, there's fear. There's a guy puts a knife to your throat. You've legitimately got a reason to shit your pants and be full of fear. But what most people have is they have the perception of fear before it's ever realized. There's nothing to fear yet. Fearing failure, you've not even taken the first fucking step.
Yeah.
Oh, what would happen if my coffee shop, you know, what happens if I didn't open it? Don't worry about it. It's you taking the first step.
It hasn't even happened.
It hasn't even happened. So that's where the false evidence appearing real analogy comes from. And I kind of get it to a certain point. But again, tell you what, in life stems down to 2 things: mindset and communication. If you can communicate with people, or even if you understand communication, so how people communicate with you. So I'm an NLP practitioner as well. Some people are like, oh no, fucking voodoo stuff. You're trying to sell me some double glazing. Don't worry, I'm not. But NLP is basically this science of communication. That's what it is. So if you can communicate and you have your mindset right, you can't lose in life. You just can't.
I was going to throw in a third there. How about perspective?
I think perspective comes down to mindset. I think it's an element of mindset for sure.
Because I touch on perspective so much because, you know, yes, it's in there with mindset, and I think people lack. I don't know whether lack is the right word, but lack perspective a little bit, because you touched on it there. You know, in regards to fear and, you know, accepting failure, it is a matter of perspective, and life is all a matter of perspective. You know, whether you lose a job or you get fired, or whether you have an opportunity to take a step forward, take a step back, you know, every single day, every single minute of every single day is all a matter of perspective. 100%. And it is how you choose to look at something, and you can look at it that way or you can look at it this way. But lately, you know, I don't know whether it's just, you know, my perception of other people or what, I don't know, but
your perspective. Again,
you know, we could get fucking deep. But people I've observed, and I do observe, I don't judge. I hate judgment. Judgment is one thing that I would eradicate, and eradicate is a strong word, but judgment is very, very, you know, one thing that is going on right now in 2020, and it is very, very bad. We do live in a culture of judgment and labels and stereotypes, but people seem to be perceiving, not, you know, taking that step to go, oh, self-aware, oh, let's ask why, let's think, let's, you know, take a step back. It's always it's always okay. You know, it's always just go with the flow. It's always.
There's something in psychology which is called the RSI, the RAS, the reticular activation system. And effectively, the reticular activation system, because your brain is absorbing so much information all the time, it distorts and it deletes. So most of the stuff. So for example, I've got 2 signs behind me. Your brain knows they're there, but it's not read any of them. If I said to you, you know, how many microphones are there behind me on the shelf? You're visually watching them, but your brain has blocked it. It's deleted that information because it can't absorb it. At any given time, your brain can deal with 7 ± 2 pieces of information at any given nanosecond. That's how much processing power we have. So the reticular activation system is great because it basically gives you more of what you're looking for. So to your point about perspective there, if you're looking for reasons to be fucked off at the moment, loss of jobs, Black Lives Matter, all these horrible things that are going on, you're going to find more of them. If you're looking for good in the world, you're going to find more of it. You know, the NHS, amazing nurses and doctors and heroes who are doing, trying to get us out of COVID, etc. So, and if you think, oh, that sounds like sort of waffle or nonsense, think about it this
believe
way.
me,
When you've got, so I've got my dream car, Audi A5, black, Sportback, black edition, dream car, always wanted it for the last like 5 years. I've got that. Before I had that, I never saw it. Never saw those cars anywhere. Now I've fucking got one. They're everywhere. They're not.
Yeah.
It's because my reticular activation system is now looking for more of what I'm interested in. And that's what happens in life. And that's why mindset is so important, because if you look for reasons to win, you'll find them. If you look for reasons to lose, you will also find them.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow.
So we went down a bit of a tangent and a rabbit hole we didn't know it was going to go down. We're going to talk about branding and podcasting, and we've ended up talking about psychology and the reticular activation system.
That's the great thing about podcasts, dude, is that you never know where it's going to go, because
100%.
I've got a whole list of stuff here, and I posted something just before I hopped on this about university degrees. I don't know about yourself. Did you go to university?
I did not. I studied at the University of Life, man.
See, exactly. There's something we
I
have in
hate
common.
that. I hate that as a phrase, but I'm going to have to use it.
No, it's great, because there's something we have in common, because I saw something trending on LinkedIn about universities becoming less and less popular. And obviously it's been around, it's been happening for a while. It's been, coming on and off with, the .com era, booming. But, I wanted to post it because obviously I felt that, I don't know whether I feel that I missed it, because I graduated in 2009 and I got shoved into the world very, very quick. So I went straight into, I think my first job was door-to-door sales, here in Bournemouth. And then I had a series of selling job.
Selling what? What were you selling door to door? Oh
God, I was selling this shitty home insulation or roof insulation or something like that.
Oh God.
For about 500 quid commission each day. So each time you sell or get in a house, that taught me selling.
Yeah.
So I had a series of selling jobs, on and off for a couple of years after that. And then until I got into the fitness industry, that was, my experience of, real life. But it's interesting now that obviously after this .com era, that now everyone's going, oh, well, you don't need a degree. We don't value it. But I'm 27 now.
It depends. Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you've done. I had loads of mates who went to loads of them went to Southampton, weirdly, down the road from you. But they did like criminology, and they did like all these not shout out to all the criminologists who are going to listen to this podcast, of which I'm sure there's loads.
Yeah.
But it was one of those degrees where you could kind of like, there was a bit of psychology in there. There was it was just one of those things not to kill 2 or 3 years, but you could kind of put it into different areas. One of them's now, and they're very successful guys, don't get me wrong. One's in sales recruitment, one's in an estate agent, one's opened a men's clothing store. They've done fuck all, like nothing to do with criminology, nothing. But equally, I wouldn't want a surgeon who hadn't been to university to cut me open. I'd rather he had studied at King's College in London than the University of Life. So it depends, it's horses for courses, isn't it? But I think definitely there's more, and I think this is a great thing. There's more importance now on who you are than what you know.
I like that.
I think that there's definitely more of an importance of that. I saw an advert the other day that had gone up. Stephen Bartlett, the guy who owns Social Chain, which is a huge social media agency. He's just quit. Not quit. He's just sold up. He's gone. He's out.
Oh, really?
750 million quid a year agency or something like that. It's like, I might be fudging the numbers there, but incredibly successful dude, incredibly successful. And he's now looking for an assistant, an executive assistant. And he said, I don't want CVs. Send me an email with a 60-second video and tell me 3 most interesting points about you as a person. That's how he's going to decide on the job. He don't care about, your executive assistant experience or what university degree.
Do you know how many emails he's going to get?
I say, if you don't get 10,000, I'll be amazed.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cool way of doing it. But if you're like, a major guy like that, I mean, how do you filter through that? You know,
He's,
do you
well,
know how many?
He'll have one of his existing assistants do it
I
before
know.
he leaves the company. He definitely ain't sitting there reading through 10 or watching. Mind you, 10,000. How long does it take to read 10,000 bullet points? Probably not that long. Definitely not as long
No.
as 10,000 CVs.
I mean,
Definitely not.
that's part of. I mean, you take Gary Vee for example. You know, it was kind of cool maybe 3-4 years ago. I mean, when he started, reaching out to the people, being authentic, but now, with the platforms out, it's I stopped watching it because I mean, Gary is Gary. Everyone loves him, and everyone loves his stuff. But it just feels a little bit. It just feels a little bit samey.
He's a trailblazer, and fundamentally, at a certain point, you could listen to all the information. Well, at some point down the line, somewhere, you have to go and do something.
Yeah,
to have something, you have to do something, and a lot of people want the outcome before they've done the work. The outcome comes after the work.
And whether it's him or someone else, I think the point is, like I said earlier, I think it was 2013. I think I was still a PT back then. You're listening to other people. Even you're reading books. You're reading whatever. I think it was Jamie Alderton. I was reading his book, and at some point something just clicks, doesn't it? And you just go, okay, I'll execute. And I think this is when Alexander Consulting came in. And I actually flew to Australia. I had a bad breakup at that point, and I actually flew to Australia. I spent some time with my uncle. I had a bit of a kind of detox stuff, a bit of exercise, bit of get myself refreshed. Came back from Australia, spent a couple months back at the gym, quit the gym, and then I executed on all of this now. And thinking back on the few months after that, I stopped listening to all of the stuff that everyone consumes now. I just went,
certain point you need to just block out all the noise, because external factors can dictate your internal feelings. And your thoughts become your words become your actions, and your actions become your outcomes. That's how it works. So sometimes when you've gone through something like that and you're at a point of detox or whatever, you've heard enough information, you just have to go and execute what you know. And sometimes it is easier to just block it off, stop listening to everybody else, and take one step. That's why I say to when I've coached people before, they're like, I want to do this, that, and that. I want to do blah, 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 blah. They come up with 1,000,001 things. I always, when I've done coaching sessions, executive coaching sessions, I never let them leave with more than 3 things to do. Because they just don't leave and do anything straight away.
Do you think that's the problem though with people? Because I think I remember a title of one of the vlogs I did. I think it was titled "Stop Scrolling and Start Making." Because it's so true. People like to scroll, don't they? But they don't like to actually make. Whether it's a podcast like we're doing now, or whether it's all. Some people are uncomfortable on camera, and I think that's why podcasts are taking off, so that they're better at that. Or whether you're comfortable behind the camera and take some photos. It's different strokes for different folks, but at some point you have to stop scrolling and go, look, I gotta do something here.
Yeah, nothing happens unless you take a step of action. And that's the one thing I'd say. If you take away one lesson from this podcast, work out what's the one next step. You don't need to know, the journey. I know it's a bit of a sort of a Google quote. The journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. It does. You don't have to know everything. You're not going to know everything. Take the one step in the direction that you perceive, going back to your idea of perception, that you want to go in, and see where that takes you. Then take the next step. Incremental growth towards a bigger goal is the way that you'll attain it. Sitting there going, oh, I want to be a millionaire, sitting there doing, morning mantras or whatever for 37 minutes, listening to some Zen Buddhist meditation on fucking Spotify is not going to put any money in your bank. Going and doing something is, but ultimately you have to have the mindset to know where you're trying to go to start on that journey. So take one step, and that would be my main piece of action. On that note though, I'm afraid I'm going to have to go, because weirdly I've now got to jump on a call with a health tech billionaire. And that's not bullshit. That's not just a great way to end the podcast. No, that's genuine.
That's awesome, mate. Give him my best. And
I will do. Thank you, my friend. I enjoyed it. Cheers, buddy. Take care, pal.
Bye.
Good to connect you. Bye, mate.